What's good? It's Wood. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. It's taking place August 28th, Showtime pay-per-view. Showtime also has already had a previously scheduled boxing match on that day. It was David Benavidez versus Jose Uzcategui. So I wonder if they're going to put Benavidez Uzcategui, slide that off of Showtime, regular Showtime, and put it on the pay-per-views undercard. Seems like it would make sense. But Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. You know, I actually think this is a pretty interesting, creative, quality matchup. This is circus fights done right, in my opinion. And it appears to be the next logical step for Jake Paul's, boxing development. At this point, he fought a YouTuber and then a professional athlete, but a NBA player, Nate Robinson, knocked him out. Then an actual fighter in Ben Askren, although a wrestler, not a striker. So it's been this weird kind of step up, but is it a step up, and how much of a step? Every rung of the ladder, because it's still not going against a professional or even amateur boxer, right? So he's stepping up the quality in fighter competitor, because Nate Robinson is more athletic than Ben Askren, but Ben Askren, has fought Robbie Lawler, beat Robbie Lawler, and now is going against Tyron Woodley, who his background is that of a wrestler. Tyron Woodley was a college wrestler. He developed his striking and improved his striking over time, and he was a good enough athlete to where when he did improve his striking, it turned out he was blessed with a very good right hand, quickness on the right hand, and devastating power. Good left hook too. And he had worked on his jab over time and his stand-up defense. And he worked on these things and developed and improved them to where if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that he was a wrestler and not a born striker. If you're watching Woodley's, his championship run, he had several title defenses. He defended successfully against, former hotshot Darren Till, who the UFC was kind of fast-tracking to a title contention. Colby Covington should have gotten that title defense against Woodley, not Darren Till. The UFC was asking Colby Covington, it was either after his win over RDA, Dos Anjos, or his win over Robbie Lawler, that they asked Colby Covington, hey, you could fight for the title if you do it on 1.5 to 2 months notice. Something stupid. Especially after a full five rounder in that Colby Covington win. The UFC asked him to do the title fight. Hey, you want this shot? Do it on super quick turnaround. Colby said, no, I'm going to need some more time healing up. I think he had some nose issue or surgery that he had to have. Something that he needed to repair, let alone the natural recovery and the normal timetable they normally give you, especially after a 5-rounder. So the UFC said, whoop, sorry, and then they gave that opportunity to Darren Till, and Darren Till was surging at the time. He had a close decision win over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He just obliterated Cowboy Cerrone. And so this Woodley versus Till championship fight for Woodley's title was, the stakes were high. And there were a lot of people who thought that Darren Till, was going to come out on top in that one. And even those who thought Woodley would win would still not call that other side crazy for thinking that Darren Till is going to win. And in that fight, Woodley actually created great distance control, very patient. He was kind of like a step back, and then at the right time explode with, again, super quickness with that deadly right hand. But he would throw only 1 or 2, maybe 3 punches at a time. Wasn't really just standing in the pocket to, go head to head and just trade with you. He wasn't that type of fighter. But once Woodley eventually lost the title to Kamaru Usman, the current champ, in a 5-round decision, we've seen Usman, continue to improve and stop his last couple of opponents. Just knocked out Jorge Masvidal, stopped Colby Covington, stopped Gilbert Burns. Woodley lost his title to Usman in a 5-round decision, and Usman basically just worked him over. He just used aggression, kept him up against the cage, would take him down, just kind of beat on him, but not really devastate him with the striking. It was more grind him out. And Usman basically won all 5 rounds. He dominated Woodley, and it was like, damn, okay. So Woodley went from like 4 successful title defenses to losing his title like that against Usman. So it's like, and then less than a year later, COVID came, and in that COVID kind of non-crowd type of fight, Woodley would then lose to Gilbert Burns, and then Colby Covington, and then Vicente Luque. The last 2 were by stoppage. Colby Covington in the 5th round, there was like a rib injury to Woodley as Colby just kept him down and kept pounding on him. And then against Vicente Luque in his most recent fight, but in this one, he actually got stopped in the stand-up. Like, this one was different. This was Woodley actually trying to let his hands go. You know, in those last couple fights, he was unable to pull the trigger. It was like he was half spooked by the threat of a takedown and just not confident that if he throws 2 or 3 punches, that good things will happen over the course of a round. He just got more and more gun shy over time. And then in this last fight against Vicente Luque, he's just foot on the gas like, F it, whatever happens, happens. And he paid for it. He landed some nice shots. It was an exciting few minutes while it lasted. But yeah, Woodley ended up just leaving himself, you know, exposed in a way where vintage Woodley would never do. I mean, this is a guy who went 10 hard rounds versus Wonderboy Thompson, one of the more deadly strikers pound for pound over the past, I don't know, like 10 or so years, 8 to 10 years. So Woodley's always on his P's and Q's defensively. But after losing his title, yeah, he went from being, you're just not doing enough, Tyron, decision loser, to clumsily attacking and getting caught in uncharacteristic ways and finished to where now it's like, is Woodley's chin even shot to a degree? So this is the version of Tyron Woodley, nearly 40 years old, just got cut by the UFC. And I wonder, it's kind of interesting, did Dana White do Tyron Woodley a solid intentionally or inadvertently? Because Woodley and the UFC brass had a bad relationship to where Tyron wasn't really beloved and appreciated as a champion for the years that he was champion. And they made a big stink, they being the UFC, made a big issue about Tyron campaigning publicly about his lack of pay. He wasn't satisfied with the money he was getting and would just kind of air him out. And that apparently didn't sit well with Dana and company. So even if Dana was trying to stick it to him by cutting him after this loss to Vicente Luque, which I'm not saying that was the intent of White, but I'm saying if that was, he did inadvertently do him a solid, because now Tyron Woodley's actually going to get paid more in this Jake Paul fight than he did as champion, as UFC champion, far more. We'll see how the numbers break down, but just keep your eye on that. But here we are, Tyron Woodley is taking on Jake Paul, and Jake Paul has been training like a professional boxer for the past 2 years. Like, you can say what you want, he hasn't fought professionally against a boxer, not yet, but he's been in the gym. He has been in the gym a ton, and he's been developing, improving. I listed the opponents, non-professional boxers, but now he's at least in there with a legitimate professional, not only fighter like Ben Askren, but unlike Ben Askren, a striker as well. Somebody who has put people out on their feet and has gone whole fights basically in the stand-up. This is going to be very different than these other opponents. I mean, Woodley has been trying to get, boxing crossover fights for a while, and he's been in the gym with some real boxers, like Jake Paul has been in the gym with real boxers. So the question is, because we know what was happening on the Jake Paul side, at least in his personal development, we've only seen the rubber hit the road in so many ways, not in the same real life scenarios or as many as we've seen Tyron Woodley in, where it's like, you better dig deep and do what you need to do to, to come out on top or to survive or whatever the case. We haven't seen Jake Paul go beyond the first round. Like, he has been basically pitching a perfect game in all of his boxing fights to this point. So we haven't even really seen a regular boxing or fighting rhythm break out where it's like, no, you didn't hit a home run with your first meaningful blow, It was a missing jab. The guy slipped it, and in fact, he came in and he hit you with the jab. Okay, now you got a circle. Clean your nose out. You just took one. Your eyes might be watering, and now you've got to play chess with this guy and figure things out. Not to mention not having the experience in going deep into fights yet. And Jake Paul actually said in an interview, and Jake Paul, it will impress you the more you hear him in interviews, believe it or not. Maybe not the press conferences where he's more so in his shtick of showmanship, but when you hear him in an interview, you kind of see what, the method behind the madness, essentially. But he says that he was actually disappointed that he couldn't go more rounds in his last fight with Ben Askren, because that's what he was really trying to get, just more actual experience. And I do think Jake Paul is respecting the craft to that degree, where he knows he's not fooling himself in thinking, okay, I am the shit because I knocked out Ben Askren and Nate Robinson. I think that he is actually trying to get the Iron Way for you Game of Thrones fans out there. He is putting in the time, and he does have a laser of a right hand. I do want to see his arsenal. I do want to see if he could take a punch. I do want to see if he has cardio. So now he's going against a professional Tyron Woodley, and my first thoughts are, how gun-shy is Tyron Woodley? Like, was it the threat of a takedown that got him unable to pull the trigger in the millisecond perfect timing type of way that he used to? Like, this was a sharp shooting counterpuncher. Like, you did not want to get caught slipping against Tyron Woodley. Look at how he earned the title against Robbie Lawler. Look at that performance, because Robbie Lawler was a murderous puncher. So watch Tyron Woodley win the title a few years ago against Robbie Lawler, and you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the danger that you are in when exchanging with a elite level Tyron Woodley when he's at the peak of his powers, which after these last fights, again, we don't know. So these are the question marks. He's almost 40, if not already. Jake Paul is still in the part of his life where he actually thinks he's invincible. Like, he has no fear of running into a wall, and he has a 20-pound weight advantage over Woodley. Woodley competed at 170 throughout most of his relevant mixed martial arts career. I mean, the most relevant part of his mixed martial arts career. So his run up to the championship, through his title reign, and then on this descent, he's been a 170 guy. This fight, I believe, is going to be at 190, which is closer to Jake's true competing weight. Jake's a big boy, so he's going to have a youth advantage, a size advantage. He's been doing nothing but boxing. I think that, whatever he was doing on his YouTube channel to get famous before putting the gloves on, I'm convinced that he's doing more of the gloves on, let's train and fight, than whatever he was doing to get to this famous point. I think that he has found the love of his life in boxing. And that might be bad news for Tyron Woodley right here. I'm going to, review more tape, the tape that there is of Jake. And, I've seen most Tyron Woodley fights, but I do want to rewatch a lot of them. But if I had to make the guess right now, and I'm going to do the full preview analysis video leading up to the fight. I mean, it's a couple months away. But gut feeling on this initial thought, if it's scheduled for 3 rounds or less, I'm actually gonna go Jake Paul. If it's scheduled for longer than 3 rounds, I'm actually gonna go with the 40-year-old. I'm gonna go with the guy who's had to fight a lot more. Initial thoughts, I'm gonna reevaluate all this, but if it's a short fight where, explosiveness, just willing to just get down, let's do this, let's get filthy right now, let me employ my craft, let me get my right hand and the punches that matter off, not get caught with the big shot, let's go for 3 rounds, high intensity, foot on the gas. I think I might go young Jake on that one, but 6-rounder, I think I'm gonna go with the guy who's been in some UFC 4th and 5th rounds, you feel me? Championship level rounds. Even at this diminished state, I'll still go Tyron Woodley. And, some of that's because I don't think that Jake necessarily has a hand speed advantage. I think he might be more confident in the way that he delivers the punch at this point. I think psychologically he might be in a better place and just being able to let that hand go. But again, he's not going to have any threat of a takedown for Tyron Woodley. So if that was a part of Woodley's hang-up, and if that has been a part of the hang-up, then that should be reduced. That fear should be reduced. And hopefully for Woodley's sake, that means that he's more liberated in throwing his punches. And I don't know who has the hand speed advantage. I think Tyron still might have that. Tyron had quick ass hands. Again, check out the fight against Robbie Lawler, which earned him the title. Go, earlier. Look at his fight against even Kelvin Gastelum. Even though Kelvin Gastelum, I believe, was weight compromised, he ended up fighting up at 185. Watch both of Tyron Woodley's fights against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. One fight's an all-timer in my book. The second fight was so boring that they made you forget about how good the first fight was. What's up with that, guys? Like, everybody shit on Woodley and Thompson for like the next 3 years, basically. He was in the fans' doghouse because of how lackluster that the rematch was. But that first fight, damn, that was, we don't know who's going to win this fight coming into this fight, because it was kind of looked at as a 50-50, because Wonderboy, we knew how bad he was. We saw him beat Rory McDonald, Johnny Hendricks, and he was beating people in some creative ways with a lot of the kicks and his, almost Lyoto Machida-like karate style of striking. That was what Woodley was up against, and he went, again, a full 10 rounds. One, a draw. The second, a Woodley decision win. So watch those. Watch his fight against Darren Till. Even watch some of his losses, his recent losses. And, maybe that will tell you more of the story of what to expect here. It'll definitely tell you more of a story in terms of like the state that Woodley's in. But yeah, this is actually an interesting matchup. A lot of people kind of shit on these circus fights, if you will. But when it's done right, it could be a very compelling thing, and this one at least has my interest peaked. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.